Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode.
Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. Today we have someone with us from Boston that we are thrilled to finally be talking with, and she is the infamous Sarah Jenks, who I'm going to share a little bit about you, Sarah, but welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Betsy. I'm so happy to be here.
So Sarah is an ordained priestess whose work is centered around integrating sacred feminine wisdom and ceremony into our everyday lives. She's a teacher, coach, speaker, and guide in the sacred feminine space, whose work centers on helping women remember their brilliance, reclaim their bodies, heal internalized patriarchy, and reconnect with a more intuitive, cyclical, and authentic way of living. Her work bridges spirituality, embodiment, relationship, leadership, and personal transformation. Her own journey has included struggles with body image, emotional eating, disconnection from purpose, and feeling flat and exhausted despite external success. Boy, did that resonate. Through studying the sacred feminine and women's wisdom traditions, she's developed programs and teachings focused on helping women return to themselves rather than becoming someone new. So, welcome.
Which is rewilding, returning to your essence versus trying to become someone else. So you're in the right space today, Sarah. We're so glad you joined us.
I'm so excited to be here with you both. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Sarah, we start every interview with women that we talk to asking about their first decade of life. We have found that there are definitely seeds that get planted that then bloom later and through lines. And so we just want to know about what your first 10 years were like.
Oh, it makes me emotional to think about it. I had the best first 10 years of my life. Like it was just, my parents made a deeply conscious decision to raise us in nature in a very quiet town outside of Boston. And I spent the first 10 years of my life playing in the woods and listening for fairies and making potions and playing with my friends and having tea parties and all of those things that make girlhood so incredible. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And then definitely at 10, there was a turning point, but
tell us about that turning point.
So I think when we turn 10, I have a 10-year-old right now. And so I'm seeing her start to turn outwards into the world and begin to go through puberty. And so at that moment in my life, I started to notice that I was heavier than all of my friends, and I started to get bullied at school. So I went to Weight Watchers at 10 years old.
Wow.
With all of the other 30 and 40-year-old women. And I got on a diet that I did not get off of until I was 23 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I really developed this belief system that I was only going to be as successful and great as I was skinny. And, I don't have a skinny body. I'm built, I'm more like an oak tree and less like a flower, you know what I mean? And I was just always fighting my genetics and then always really medicating myself with overeating in order to feel better about life. So I was in a restrict and binge cycle for about 13 years growing up.
What ended it for you? You said 23, there was a turning point.
Yes. So I was working in advertising at the time in New York, and I put myself on a juice cleanse to just my thousandth time being like, once and for all, I'm just going to have a better body and like feel hot in 23 in New York. And one of my clients that I was the advertising manager of was Dove chocolate. Those little Dove chocolate
Mhm.
promises. I actually wrote some of the promises that are still as part of the Dove
Oh,
chocolates, like feel great about yourself, all those things. It was a super fun job, but I had this moment on like day 3 of my juice cleanse where I had thrown out a bag of Dove chocolate promises that are like this big, and I'd eaten half the bag sort of in secret at my desk. I threw out the bag. And then an hour later, I went back and I fished it out of the trash and ate the rest of the bag in the supply closet of my advertising agency.
Mm.
And it was in that moment that I was like, wow, I'm really sick.
mm,
I had no agency over what I was putting in my body at that time in my life. And what was interesting was I sort of gave up. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to be a binge eater and overweight for the rest of my life. So I might as well like try to find a way to enjoy it.
mm.
And I realized that I didn't do anything for fun anymore because I thought I had to lose weight in order to feel great about my life. And so I decided, I just was like, well, I'll take voice lessons again. I'll start going to dance class. I'll try to have more fun. Lo and behold, I stopped overeating as much,
Wow.
because I was going to food for emotional medicine and pleasure because I didn't have any pleasure in my life because I thought I had to be skinny in order to deserve it. So I flip-flopped it. And then I had this moment where I was like, people don't know this. It's 2009. And so I went to nutrition school and I started an emotional eating company. And it was insanely successful. And I did that pretty much until 2017.
Mm.
Can you tell us during those years what you learned about women
Yeah.
and about yourself, but also the women you were helping?
Yeah. I learned so much, but the thing that's coming to me right now, which was the conversation that ended up catapulting me into the work that I do now. I would get on the phone with my clients who I was coaching, and they would often say, Sarah, I don't understand what's going on. Like, I'm happily married to a great guy. I have 2 amazing kids. I have this perfect house, and I'm miserable. I can't stop eating. This is like the one area that I need to figure out. And I'm like, and I heard the pattern, check, 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 and I'm miserable. And what I was tracking, I was super young doing this work, which is like hilarious that all these people trusted me. I mean, I was very good at what I did, but there's a lot of learning on the job happening. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, what about you? What about your life? What are you interested in? Who are you beyond the mother, beyond the wife, beyond having a cute house? And they would just be like, I don't
Wow.
know. I'm like, well, that's the hole that
Yeah.
food is filling.
Yeah.
And then what I realized is this is a universal hole that many, many women have. And we're filling it in all different ways, not just food.
Yeah.
So, and then what happened for me was I then had a baby and I became a completely different person where I
Mm.
was like, running a company and feeling great and playing and like having a really great life. And then as soon as I was a mom, it was like I turned off.
The fun turned off?
The fun turned off. And my light and my ambition and the dreams that I wanted to have. And I was like, what is happening to me? What is going on? And at the same time, I had started going to Sacred Feminine ceremony because my therapist, who is now my mentor, led Sacred Feminine ceremony, like sort of in secret in her living room. And I started going, and I would have these experiences like I would be able to wake up inside of my life and look at how I was oriented around being a mother. And I was just like shocked and appalled about who I had become. And I started asking, like, why am I not telling anyone that I'm in ceremony and it's totally changing my life? What is the sacred feminine? Why isn't everybody doing this? Did people used to do this? What's going on? And so I started researching the sacred feminine from the past. And then I started understanding that it was deliberately erased. And when I was learning about that, all of a sudden my whole psychology changed. And so then I started studying how the impact of the erasure of the sacred feminine impacts our psychology today. And I started tracking that over the course of history. And so I decided to become a priestess because I really felt like the sacred feminine, and specifically my tool ceremony, is the thing that fills this gaping hole that so many women have. And it's the thing that heals our internalized patriarchal conditioning
Yeah.
that has
Mhm.
us totally forget who we are, you know, walk the path that everybody else wants us to take, um, never show up for ourselves, think that we have to choose between our own life and being a mother or being a partner. And I
Yeah.
just had it with that story.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I was telling Betsy, I remember reading something when I first kind of connected to you online about the conversation you had with your husband,
Mhm.
that you were headed in a direction,
Yeah.
and you can tell the full story, but I just remember you giving him kind of a choice or saying, this is where I'm going.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we've had like so many conversations. I think that's how it needs to it's what we need to sign up for, when we've decided to walk our soul's path instead of the traditional path. But, I told Jonathan, I was like, guess what? I am magical.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that I was magical, but this is who I am. And I'm deeply committed to having a life like way beyond what I ever thought was possible. And I really want to do it with you.
Mm.
And I want to have a marriage that like fully supports my soul and your soul. I want to raise kids where we are focused on their soul. And there's like I can't do traditional path and patriarchal relationship anymore. I am complete with that.
How did he
Just let me
respond?
know. He was like, I'm in.
Wow.
But here's the thing. This is the thing. Jonathan and I have talked about this publicly a lot. And we used to run a marriage program together. He wanted that. But in practice, for men, that requires a lot of changes in the day
Mhm.
to day. So it's not just like, sure, babe, and then everything's fine. It's like, yes, I'm into that. And guess what? We have to untie
Yeah.
like literally every single patriarchal pattern that was inside of our house. And it's so subtle, we don't even realize it's
Oh,
there.
it's so subtle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so subtle. And over time, we've been together for 20 years. We have really grown up together, and we have a deeply sacred, non-hierarchical, incredible marriage.
Mm.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to back up for our listeners because I want you to define the divine feminine
Hmm.
and then also how in the heck do you become a priestess?
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about the sacred feminine, what I am really sinking into is the wisdom that we see embodied in Mother Earth. So you have a beautiful visual behind you of the cycles
Yeah.
and how the sacred feminine is really about the principle of releasing and being in the void and growing and harvesting and then doing it all over again. And it also holds the principles of reciprocity, of non hierarchy, of integration, of alchemy, and understanding. It's really about this belief that the principles of the feminine and the principles of the masculine are meant to be held in harmony, not in hierarchy.
Yeah.
Which is what has happened,
It is
for
what has happened.
last
Yeah.
3,000
Yeah.
years, right?
Yes,
Totally.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
then becoming a priestess.
Yeah.
What did this mean? What did this look
Yes.
like, this path?
Yeah. So my path specifically was I had moved to San Francisco as a very preppy New Yorker. I grew up in Boston, but I was living in New York for 5 years. I show up in San Francisco. I am miserable because I'm just like, what is this place? So weird. It's like burners everywhere. I do not know how to fit in. So I go to therapy. And one time I walk into therapy and my therapist, I'd probably been working with her for 6 months. She hadn't cleaned up from a circle she had the night before. And she had back jacks on the floor, and I could smell incense in the couch. And there was like candle nubs and pictures of these like gorgeous, voluptuous women everywhere. And I just like froze and started to cry. It's this like incredible eruption of emotion from like chairs on the floor. I was very confused about what was happening to my body. And I just looked at her and I said, "What happened here?" And she was very surprised because I'm in, beige patent leather pumps, like a polo shirt, you know what I mean? And she's like, "Oh, okay." And she said, I'll tell you when you're ready." And I was
Oh,
like, "Oh, bitch. Like
I'm ready.
get me in that room, you know?" And so she started to bring in some more like spiritual principles into therapy. She was like definitely testing me out. Finally, I was able to go sit in a sacred feminine ceremony. And I did that for 9 years before, and I studied with her for 9 years. For the first 5 was like really in secret and tell anybody. I thought it was the weirdest thing on the planet. And then I slowly started to realize like, oh, this is working way better than any of the other training that I've had. And I started weaving some things into my coaching practice. And in my lineage, which is the 13 Moon Mystery School, you can become ordained in the lineage, just like a minister would become ordained after a certain number of years of study. So I had already studied deeply and apprenticed for a decade. And so I entered into a year-long ordination portal with my mentor, Elaine Kalila Dowdy, who was the one who was sort of doing small ceremonies in secret in her living room. She now is the head master of the largest priestess training school on the planet. And so I walked with her to become ordained in this lineage. And I've been trained to be a ceremonialist. I do my own type of ceremony. I don't do the exact 13 moon ceremonies that they teach. I have my own medicine and own stuff, but I'm definitely informed by that lineage.
Mm.
And the path is like deep apprenticeship, deep study, and being held to integrity and understanding what is the core wound that you carry. And you do not get ordained until you have transmuted that wound,
Yeah.
because we have to be the vessel for the work. And it's really taking a vow to be empty so that divine work can work through us.
Yeah.
And it's a choice, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And not
Not
something
for the
I
faint of heart,
ever,
I'm sure.
not for the faint of heart. The personal initiations I've gone through in the process have been wild. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And it's been amazing.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you are really on the forefront, I think, of this movement. And I have to tell you, I have a great
you.
grandmother named Cleela, and
You
I've never
do.
heard other woman in my life with that
Ah.
name. So I immediately felt her presence here right now.
Oh,
It's
that's
beautiful.
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, Kalila is just like, she's my spiritual mother. I just love her so much. She's an amazing woman.
Tell us about one of these circles. So
Yeah.
if you do
Yeah.
ritual, I'm really curious about if we were there with you in circle, what are
Yeah.
the parts to it, and what's the desired outcome if there is such a thing?
Yeah, totally. So one thing that I want to share that's super fun for me is that as part of me, like I call it coming out of the broom closet, because I was walking such a traditional path. I come from such a traditional family. I went to the number one liberal arts school in the country. I could have like really just been a lawyer like that. I really wanted to make sacred feminine ceremony normal. Just like people go to therapy, just like people go to yoga. So that is my like mission in life, is to be like, this is normal. Humans used to sit in ceremony literally all the time, and it's been part of the erasure of the sacred feminine and our internalized brainwashing that has us believe that it's weird or woo-woo or even evil, So the way that I like to lead ceremony on the forefront, and like the first thing I want to say is that it is the most normal thing you'll ever do. It feels so good to be in ceremony. And the way I do it specifically, and it's a few different formats. So I'm in my temple right now. So if you're on video, you can sort of see I have this
Beautiful.
large octagonal building. We hold ceremony in here. And in our temple year container, we also live stream all the ceremonies. We have a professional video crew. I'm just like setting the scene for everybody. They're like back there. And so what's so great in our temple year container is we meet on the earth holidays every 6 weeks. We do a 3-hour ceremony, and women are gathered all over the world, crossing this sacred earth threshold together. And I'm just like so happy this is happening, because I really, 10 years ago, I had a dream of having a place where anyone could just come into ceremony. And it's happening, which is great. I co-founded this temple with my co-founder and business partner and best friend, Kelly Taveras, and we've just like grown this amazing global temple. So if you're in person, and I just had a retreat last week, so I can feel everybody in the room. With retreats, we have no cameras, but with our temple ceremonies we do. So you come in this door, and right before you come in this door, you're met by a woman who's holding a gate, and she's meeting you with total love and presence. And we're standing as the threshold between the normal world and the spiritual world. And then you come in, and this whole temple is dripping with flowers. And each of our ceremony is informed by a certain archetype. So if we're doing the Great Mother, everything is burgundy and red. It's dripping with flowers. Our head of sacred beauty, Amber Tabone, does these like incredible installations. And we have the smokestress who does all of these. Diana Hampton does all these custom blends. So there's smoke, there's like hundreds of candles. And so what that does is all these sacred tools where you walk in, I just dumped over my anointing oils. You walk in and you're just like, oh my God, because you're being held by sacred beauty and by sacred form and by the other women there. So a lot of what we do is about the structure. And I wanted to elevate sacred feminine ceremony to such a way that it's like walking into one of the most beautiful Catholic cathedrals. I'm like, let's give the Catholics a run for their money. You know what I mean?
Love it.
Yeah. And so then what we do is I bring everybody on a journey, and I'm really tracking the vibrational field of the women. So that's where the 13 moon lineage is like very attuned to frequency and vibration and energy. And so you're really working on the subtle field, and I'm tracking where the wobbles are with inside the bodies of the women. And I'm just always looking to find the chink. And then when we do that, all of a sudden it's like, and we're off. And almost all of it is channeled. Sarah leaves. I'm in total priestess mode. Many people say they feel like they're on mushrooms, even though we don't do any plant medicine in my ceremonies. And what happens is they meet their soul, because in the outside world, we're taught to just be our personality.
Yeah.
And when we meet our soul, we can then ask all these questions. What am I meant to do next? What matters to me the most? How do I solve this problem? And then we do a lot of work in my community around capacity and understanding how to energetically, instead of hiding our true essence frequency in here really small, how do we practice in ceremony, like making ourselves really big? And this translates to so many things in the world. But it's feeling more like this visual behind your heads and less like, this like tight sort of knot in our systems.
What's
I
the
want to come.
I know, me too.
I would love for you
Are you
guys
in
to come.
Boston? We got to have a little field trip.
Maybe we do.
I'm only 35 minutes outside of the city.
All
It's
right.
so easy to get here. And then when we do retreats, we do that 3 days in a row. So it's like
Beautiful.
really dope.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you hear from women who have this first time experience?
Mm.
And
That were like you, sort of like, what
Yeah.
is
Well, what's so
this?
fun
I
is that
can't tell anybody I'm going to a priestess
yeah,
thing. Like,
I mostly work with people who were maybe it's like half and half, because what's so fun is that now I'm working with a lot of practitioners who want mentorship. They want to, they're so used to holding, they want to be held in a container that they can like really, and so I'm like so deeply honored to be at a point in my career where I get to hold space for people like that.
yeah.
And I have a lot of like super normal, really like, women who are high achieving and teachers and stay-at-home moms and just like everybody who just feels like so indoctrinated into the real world. And they just show up and they're just like, I'm dying, And the thing that I would say more than what I hear, it's what I see in the women, just the body language. They'll come in, they're timid, shy, or rigid, or like fake. It's like
Yeah.
usually one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then afterwards, it's just like they are a fireworks show. And you can feel who they are, and their eyes are bright, and they're standing tall, and they're so in their bodies, and they're so excited about something. And it's just, and they're connecting with the other women. It's just amazing to just see women really become who they are.
Yeah.
Like we're not adding any, like my job is to take things away so that what's in here can just really come out.
yeah.
Can we land this in this current time too?
Yeah.
Because, Kate and I have talked for we've been doing this podcast for years and talked to
Wow.
hundreds and hundreds of women about this feminine energy that's rising and this need to
Mhm.
go wild and this need to return to our essence.
Yeah.
And, I'm curious, Sarah, from your perspective, like what is happening right now in terms
Mhm.
of patriarchy dying or starting to crumble, feminine
Yeah.
rising, but then feminine getting pushed back down?
Mhm.
I'm just so curious. You're working right in these energies.
Yeah.
What do you think is
Feeling.
going on, and what do you feel is coming?
Yeah. I mean, what I feel like is going on is I do feel like we're at a tipping point. I
Yeah.
really feel like we're at a tipping point. I feel like we're at a turning point, and we're at a choice point, because I think that if not enough women say, it's me, I will go first, I will build what comes next, then it's not going to happen. And so that's why Kelly and I are just like furiously, like I should say, not furiously, ferociously shouting this work from the rooftops, because it just feels like a critical moment. And specifically around women taking responsibility to like,
Yeah.
as the crumbling is happening, we got to build something else
Yeah.
Yeah.
that can hold all of us. So it's like, and what I'm hearing in my space, women have so many ideas. We're getting fed what's needed all the time. I think it's just like thread after thread is just being dropped in. We're waking up with dreams, we're getting ideas. But then what happens is some of us are still in our patriarchal conditioning, where we then think, I'm crazy. This idea isn't for me. I don't have the capacity. I could never do that. I couldn't do that and be a mom. What is my husband going to think? I can't get investments for that. Blah, 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 blah. And then we opt out.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is like, nope, nope. It is you. You are brilliant. You do have what it takes. You are surrounded by support, but like believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And if there's gaps in your skill set, go learn them quickly,
It
and
does.
like
Yeah.
get
There's an
out there.
urgency. There's an urgency to
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
I feel it.
And I also assume, based on the work you're doing, that part of this is to build the new things. We almost need to let go of some of the security of that really isn't security, but we thought it
Mhm.
was security as
Yeah,
it's crumbling. It's like, that's not going to save us. We're
no,
going to save us.
Yeah.
correct.
And to me, it's the women who also need to get behind women. Like,
Yes.
that's where the shift's coming. We have to lead.
Mhm.
We need to lead right now.
Yeah.
And we need to support one another in endeavors and for these new systems to actually be built.
I
So it
totally
does
agree
feel
with
like
you.
an amazing time to be alive. Some days scarier than others, but also so much energy around. You can just feel things moving so quickly that there is an urgency for women to step up.
Yeah, like they weren't kidding about the fire horse here, you
No.
know?
I
Oh.
I saw something the other day that said you either get on for the ride or you get dragged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
is
I
a
feel
great way
that.
to put it. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I mean, right now, Kelly and I are writing a book,
Mm.
and we wrote it in record time. It's crazy. You know, we just launched a new Sacred Skills training program a couple of weeks ago. We're developing another program. We're going to be on a billboard in Times Square. I
Ooh.
just led a retreat last week. And it's just, I say this because it's just like, it's just here. So
Yeah.
we just have to be the vessel and just keep saying yes and take care
Yeah.
of our bodies and stay open and move and be brave and take risks. You know, because the women who look to the divine and say, I'm available to build what's next. We will get fed the ideas. And then it's just, we have to take responsibility to really move them into material form.
How do you overcome the fear? Because I think this is such a common thing that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's real as women. We've had a harder road. There are more doors that get slammed
Oh,
in our
yeah.
face.
The systems aren't built
The
for
systems
us.
aren't built for
No.
us. And so, what is some practical advice for our listeners about like, I'm having this idea and I
Mhm.
have this fire, but I'm scared. And like, how have you overcome some of those voices and your own fear about like, can I actually really step up and do this?
Yeah, it is 100% from learning about the erasure of the sacred feminine and how it
Mm,
impacts our psychology.
yeah.
100%. When I understood that the way that my fear was systematically put in me, that it was not my personality or something unique about me, I could then witness it as something separate and just get to work. And so this is why we're writing this book, because it's all about, it tracks the erasure of the sacred feminine and how it impacts us and shows up as fear and shows up as smallness
Yeah.
and shows up as over caretaking and all of these things that, you know, how these moments in history have actually infected how we see ourselves today. But literally, the antidote is just learning about it.
Yeah.
It's wild, you know, we don't have to go do like a bunch of other stuff. So for me, it is learning about that and being in ceremony,
Yeah.
which is why, and I say that because that is how I became who I am as a participant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did this for myself over a decade, and I really, after trying a gajillion other things, and for me, this is really the thing that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you take us through the erasure of the divine feminine and maybe even how it connects to Mary Magdalene?
Yeah.
I'm sort of
Yeah.
obsessed with her and I've read I think every book written and have been to where she lived in France. And so you write about Mary Magdalene on
Mhm,
your website and
mhm.
it seems to me that maybe is the one of the core events of when
Yeah.
the feminine got erased. But can
Yeah.
you give
Share
us a
that.
primer on that?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you a primer. Right now it's 200 pages in a book, so like I could really go into like super deep detail. But the way to think about it is um this idea that we take as truth, that the divine is a man and that men are naturally more powerful and smarter and should be in charge, has been constructed. It is not the way humanity has organized itself. And if you look back, you know, if you go way, you know, if you go back, what you see are many different examples where the feminine and the masculine were both worshiped in partnership.
Yeah.
And you can look at this, you know, in a lot of ways because the women were the givers of life. And how could you not see that as divine? And our menstrual cycle mimicked the moon and the seasons of the earth. How could you not see that as divine? And so our spiritual practices often, at least included and in some lineages revolved around the sacred feminine principles. And then over time, very slowly, in conjunction with political power and the oppression of women by men, they changed the stories of what the divine is to give them an excuse to control women. And so the idea of a male god, or that the divine is masculine only, was fabricated and written in order to make war and torture and the seizing of land their God-given right.
Yeah.
So something that Kelly wrote about in the book in such a beautiful way is this moment when Jesus and Mary Magdalene were alive. So what was happening in that part of the world during that time was there had been a long stretch where the divine was masculine. And you can track that historically. And there was a lot of oppression of women happening. And many believe, and it has also been like historically recorded, that Jesus and Mary Magdalene led together. They were both spiritual teachers. I believe, this is what I've been taught by my mentors, that Mary Magdalene was the feminine Christ, the embodied principle, that Jesus held the more like spiritual out of body light principle, and Mary Magdalene held the body principle. If you can see in the video, I have Jesus right here and Mary here in the temple.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what happened was those patriarchal people in power killed Jesus. Mary Magdalene fled, attempted to, or did write a body of work around her deep knowing, her gnosis, that was then lost. And the same people that killed Jesus, that lineage, decided to twist what he stood for and use this as the narrative about having one male white God in the sky. And, this whole principle around like divine order. So, and then it wasn't until I think it was 1974 that Mary Magdalene's lost book was found in a random antique store in Egypt. So just like popped out of nowhere. And so, you can look at it as if like the sacred feminine maybe had to go underground for a certain period of time. A lot of people have different viewpoints and ways to look at it. I think it's important to just like explore all viewpoints and to feel what makes you feel the most alive and the most connected to your heart. And I'm so grateful that there's so many people who are bringing what she held as a medicine keeper and as an embodiment of this work into our culture right now.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
I can't help
I could
but
talk
think,
all day about
I
this.
know.
All day about Mary. All day.
I can't help but think how, we started this conversation about your relationship and how you are modeling kind of this balanced masculine and feminine and in your marriage and this kind of equitable relationship.
Yeah.
And for your children, you brought in your children, and how that there's such a through line in looking at how things worked well between the masculine and feminine, and then how we can in our own relationships, ask for what we need and see where that is not showing up, and have the courage to say, this isn't working the way that it should.
Yeah, absolutely. When you asked me, how did you get over your fear? One of the big tension points I felt with my partner was there was a lot of unspoken hierarchy between us because I was a woman and he was a man.
Yeah.
It wasn't always overt, but it was still felt. And I I embodied that in me. You know, it wasn't just him putting something on me, like I felt that way. But when I started learning about the real story of Mary Magdalene, the fact that she was not a whore, that she was not saved by Jesus, that she was not even his disciple in the way that I understand the story, but that they were equals, just understanding that archetypal story had me shift what I know I deserve inside of my marriage better than like any other thing that I took in.
Yeah.
And so what that did for me was Jonathan and I entered an agreement field where we are 50-50 partners in a completely non-hierarchical relationship. And I really don't think I would have been able to do that if I didn't have access to these, not only the current, like real stories, but understanding how the rewriting of history and the erasure of history was like making me the way I was on
Yeah.
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
You know, it's so messed up. But the best way to brainwash an entire society is to tell them stories that
Yeah.
aren't true.
Yep. Look what we have on our phones all the time too.
Uh-huh.
Social
I know.
media.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just have to do a shout out and kudos to your husband, Jonathan,
Oh,
because
thanks.
yeah, I don't know him, but I'm like kind of sitting here in awe of
Mhm.
his willingness to meet you here and be like, yeah, let's do a 50-50 egalitarian equal
Yep.
partnership. And yeah, that's not every man that's willing to do that. So
It's not
just a
every man.
couple snaps for Jonathan.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I love
Yeah.
hearing that.
And we didn't start that way. And the thing he always says is, he's like, well, of course, because then I get to know you.
Mm,
You know, because women can't be their fully expressed in their essence wild selves in a hierarchical relationship where they do not have agency.
Amen.
amen.
Those
I
two
was-
things are mutually exclusive.
They
And so
absolutely are.
Jonathan's like, thank God I get to spend my life with you. You're so fun and like such a badass and like so much more like alive and
yeah.
interesting and
Yes.
embodied
Alive.
Yes.
That's
than
the
I
rewilding.
was when I was stuck in this hierarchical, patriarchal bullshit.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. And
Beautiful.
it's this level of conscious, it's like a conscious partnership that,
totally. And it's also
raises the conscious.
better for him because it's like,
Exactly.
um, because we have shared partnership, you know,
Yeah.
we're 50-50 financially, we're 50-50 in parenting, we're 50-50 with the house. So like we hold each other, we're a team and it's so great.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Love that.
We have a final question that we always ask guests, and it comes from the book Women Who Run with the Wolves,
Uh-huh.
Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She writes about our entry into our life as a wild woman. And you definitely are one.
Yeah, you
And
got out of the box.
you got
I
out of the
did.
box pretty early. And so we would love to know which of these four doors that you potentially went through to become a
Mm.
wild woman.
Yeah. So if you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door.
Mhm.
And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life,
Mhm.
that is a door. So is there one or
Yeah,
more that really resonate for you?
that's mine. I yearn for a deeper life. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
always been, you know, it brings me back to your first question about what was
Mhm.
the first decade of my life like. I was searching, you
Seeker.
know, I was a seeker. I'm like, I can feel something here on this planet, but I can't see it. You
Mm,
know, like what is it?
Yeah.
And that curiosity really drives me.
Yeah. Well, and you're helping women have a deeper life, a
Mhm.
sane life. You're
Yeah.
now, yeah. I mean, just as a priestess, it makes me want to go right now.
we're gonna find a
We
time
need to
and get
come.
there.
Yeah.
Sarah, tell our listeners where they can find your work, and if they also want to join Kate and I at a retreat, one of your retreats or
Yeah.
your
Oh my God, that'd be
events,
so
like
great.
let us know where people can find your information.
Yeah. So the best place to go is livingtemplehq.com. And there's a few different ways in. I have a free sacred start guide. So if you want to have a sacred feminine morning practice, that's a totally free guide that's right on the homepage. Right under that, you'll see the temple year container. So if you want to join our community in the temple for ceremonies every 6 weeks, you can join right from your living room. That's the best thing to do. If you want to just like dive right in the deep end, we have our last retreat of 2026 in September. So I don't know when this is coming out, but it's September
Before
18th.
September. Yeah.
Okay, great. September 18th through the 20th. And it is 50 women. We do deep ceremony. We swim in the lake. We lounge in the grass. We get to be in temple life for 3 days together. And that's a place where women come to really deepen in their clarity of who they are, what comes next for them, and then build the capacity to like jump off the cliff into the next chapter of their life.
Beautiful.
Sounds amazing. This has
And
been
I would love to have you both. It would
we would love to
so
come.
great to have you.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I love the work you're doing. We obviously have so much connection to, supporting women in this becoming and returning to your natural essence. And yeah, you're a bright light. So thank you for joining us and
Thank you both
Yeah,
so
sharing
much.
your
beautiful
wisdom.
conversation. Thank you
I
so
just-
much, Sarah.
Loved being here with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, blessings. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.